Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be with you today. My name's Rahul Kamath, and I drive product management for Oracle's Enterprise Data Management Cloud service. And I'm truly honored to be joined by Stephanie Kohler of Noble Energy. So thank you, Stephanie, for joining us. Without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and get started. Stephanie, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So wanted to begin our conversation by motivating the discussion around enterprise data management. And so the thing about we learned as we looked to reimagine Oracle Data Relationship Management, which many of you may know is our on-premise offering. As we reimagined it for the cloud, as we were thinking about EDM, we thought about all the different use cases that you as customers would like to engage in with our solution. And we found that there were a variety of different use cases that transcended a variety of different domains. So some of you, and even in terms of sort of the terminology that we used, varied a lot. So some folks talked about master data, others thought about it as dimensions and hierarchies. Still others had use cases around reference data management. There was obviously the need to be able to manage our data maps alongside the dimensions and hierarchies. Various reporting structures needed to be reconciled. Business taxonomies needed to be maintained. And then to add to the reference data, we had a variety of different types and codes all over the enterprise that needed to be categorized and organized in a way that could make them consistently used across different applications, both operational and analytical. And so we essentially concluded that we needed to come up with a new term. And so we have been evangelizing the word enterprise data to reference sort of all of these different types of structures that can be managed really well within our solution. And that really led us to coin the term Enterprise Data Management Cloud to refer to the service that we'll be talking about today. And so this is really enterprise data management, in quotes, if you will, as opposed to data management, not to be confused with the data management module that is embedded within each of our EPM cloud modules and is intended to essentially move data. So to further clarify what we mean by that, just imagine any kind of a business transaction, something as straightforward as us, going to a restaurant to order a meal, and then at the conclusion of it, we receive a bill. The information, if you will, that refers to all of the purchases as part of that order are obviously what we mean by data. And then the metadata could vary from a variety of things, including the store location, the store name, the various products that you ordered, the price list information, who the employee was, who you worked with, as well as the contact point information associated with that party. And whenever we sort of ring up that transaction at a point of sale, it obviously gets posted to the general ledger, and then ultimately, that ties back to the chart of accounts, which is how we sort of pull it all together within a sort of financial application, if you will. And so enterprise data, as we describe it, is really all of those different metadata artifacts that touch the transaction, with the exception of the actual data itself. The data is something that you're going to rely on moving using the data management module, and then enterprise data is really what changes over time at the edges of your organization, and what EDM, for short, is designed to help you manage and govern. So, it behooves us to just define Enterprise Data Management Cloud in simple terms as a system of reference and a system of engagement for you to manage the data associated with the enterprise, like we discussed, to give you a consistent view across your applications, both cloud and on-premise. And so when we think a little bit about sort of what those different data elements are, they can vary depending upon the domain you're in. So EDM obviously is, we spend a lot of time thinking about EDM in finance, but it is broadly applicable across the enterprise. And so from a finance perspective, all the usual suspects, you know, including the chart of account segments, such as your natural accounts, your legal entities, your cost centers, your products or services, your business units, etc. You know, all of those are valid artifacts or structures, if you will, that you're going to manage within EDM. And then from a broader business perspective, it might include other structural elements such as your sales territories, your salesperson hierarchies, companies and organization information. It could include vertical artifacts. So if you have a lot of physical stores as a retailer, it might include your stores. As a bank, it might include your ATMs. As a utility, it might include, you know, your metered locations or what have you. And then from an analytical standpoint, obviously, it's all of your dimension members organized by alternate hierarchy, as well as some complex multidimensional types of mappings, or even more sort of simpler mappings that might be, you know, between your GL accounts and your consolidation accounts and so on. And then last but not the least, the reference data elements that we talked about. But in summary, it's really all about how you can classify and measure the value across the enterprise, the different business perspectives that you want to take when you want to look at a report by region, by channel, by geography, by product line, and so on and so forth. Your ability to organize information in a way that's most amenable to the language that you use within your company is something that we help you organize the data by, and then help you keep it internally consistent in the face of changes that occur at the edges of your organization. And so I liken it very much to a universal remote. You know, to take an analogy from your personal lives, in your family room or your entertainment center, you've got a variety of different systems, each of which has a specific business purpose, or entertainment purpose rather, and you're looking to switch between them in order to entertain yourself. You know, switch from playing a game to watching a movie, and you want your sound system to essentially pass through the correct audio consistently. And so instead of using 5 different remotes for 5 different systems, what you want is a single universal remote that allows you to orchestrate the change that you want to perform. And so I liken the work that we do from an enterprise data management perspective very much to that. So a typical change process within an enterprise, you've got your transactional systems at the bottom of your screen and your analytical applications up top. And you know, you're looking to introduce a new product line and record those transactions associated with it in your general ledger. You sort of locally have a conversation with the person responsible for the GL within your division, and they need to align that with group. And you know, we're constantly passing information either through meetings, face-to-face, over email, using you know, custom access databases or some sort of SharePoint workflow to make those changes percolate through the organization, to make sure that the sales team is getting compensated for those new products. That if it's a physically inventoriable asset, you want to be able to make sure that it's tied into your supply chain system. And then, of course, you want to be able to report against it, be able to plan against it for next year's, for the next fiscal budget, and then, of course, report based on the requirements for consolidation and close. And so whenever there is a change that occurs that's undesirable, it becomes very difficult for you to really back that out because of the number of stakeholders and the transaction costs associated with it. It creates plenty of opportunity for error. We've all been in reporting reconciliation meetings where the numbers don't tie, no matter how great of an investment we've made in our analytical systems. And there are these redundancies and inefficiencies that really come to hurt us. So with enterprise data management, really, we have the opportunity to have a single application that frontline business users at the edges of the organization can go to, on a self-service basis, contribute changes that they're closest to, that they're the experts on, be able to receive instantaneous feedback around the changes that they're requesting in terms of business rules and validations that have been coded into the system that allow you to ensure that changes are made consistently and don't break downstream systems. And then once they're reconciled across different application contexts, you have the ability to synchronize those changes with those operational and analytical applications, keeping all of your enterprise data harmonized across these different business contexts. And so really, we help serve you in terms of three, or rather four different business contexts or use cases, if you will. I like to call them the 4 A's of enterprise data management. The first is to help you accelerate your journey to cloud. So if you're engaged in any kind of digital transformation and you're looking to coexist assets, or you're looking to modernize your systems, or you're looking to engage in a geo reduction type of initiative, or you're simply looking to leverage your metadata across multiple cloud-based solutions, we've got your back in that context. Secondly, if you're looking to grow through acquisition, or you tend to, as an organization, reorganize quite frequently, and you're looking for greater flexibility and agility as an enterprise, you want a solution where you can evaluate different structural options. The most recent health crisis has been a case in point where a lot of customers are saying we want to evaluate different scenarios in which we want to respond to the challenges we're faced in our business. And you can't do that in your transactional systems. You need a place to be able to have a sandbox where you can evaluate your options, look at how you imagine, different possible worlds in which your future might be more, accretive to you as a business. And you need a place to manage those structures. And so EDM can help you assimilate those kinds of structural transformation efforts better. Third, you want to essentially align how you record your transactions with how you report against them. You want to have fully reconciled reports. You want to be able to manage changes across different alternate business perspectives. We're a key enabler of those kinds of capabilities. And then last but not the least, we're essentially enabling you to manage and audit your assets by helping govern them consistently through inference-based workflow types of capabilities. And so, to double down a little bit on this, from an alignment perspective, it's really about building trustworthy insights across your transactional and analytical systems. And we want to give you the capabilities to compare those structures in a meaningful way to understand how you can reconcile them. From accelerating your journey to the cloud or enabling cloud coexistence, really the value proposition there is about being able to manage those different structures of the acquired entities, be able to map them into your corporate structure and quickly declare victory to Wall Street as you sort of continue to rationalize the structures over time, after the fact, if you will. So it gives you leverage post-acquisition, but it also gives you a modeling environment where you can simulate what it might mean to acquire an entity or to reorganize yourself in one way or another. And then from a business transformation perspective, it's your opportunity to build that single chart of accounts, the global chart of accounts that you can use then to assimilate these acquired entities, or to essentially rationalize different charts across different operational businesses that may have different operating structures and business models, in order to give you a cohesive perspective at the group level. And this might even tie back to accelerating your journey to the cloud as you're looking to rethink your chart of accounts when you're going from ground to cloud. And last but not the least, you want to essentially provide an environment to your end users that is self-service, requires low maintenance in terms of managing the workflows associated with enabling change management, do it in a very low maintenance and no code sort of way. You want those workflows to behave in an on an inference basis, so that as you define policies, the behavior of those workflows evolve with your policy change, rather than you have to go in and requisition an engineering change order and mess around with web services and workflow orchestration engines. And so that's something that we've really worked hard to deliver in terms of the key capabilities we offer around enterprise data management. One of the areas we've really invested in is the notion of application perspectives as opposed to traditional master data management, where you get first-class perspectives around individual modules that you work with. So as a planner, if I come into EDM, I can actually see the hierarchies in a way that's very familiar to me as it would be within the dimensionality I look at within planning. The same is true for any application that you register within EDM. And that's really something that's an industry first. Nobody has done that. Another area where we've really invested, and we have many patents to speak of there, is around visualizing the changes that you're making. So almost all of our customers over the years have wanted the ability to model changes without committing them into production. So now you have the ability to essentially record a set of changes and visualize them against a production structure without actually committing to them. This allows you to do impact analysis and evaluate structures collaboratively with your colleagues before you commit to them. This brings me to our ability to do real-time multi-user collaboration. So much like you work in environments such as Google Docs or Google Sheets, where you can collaborate with your peers on making changes, EDM is really the place for multiple users to come together and collaborate on change requests. They could contain one change, or they could contain 10,000 changes. And as you make changes, I can see them, and vice versa. Creates a wonderful experience to really digitally collaborate on very complex change management activities, which is particularly important in the world that we're operating in today with the crisis, where we're all working remotely. We also have capabilities around what we call subscription management that allows you to automate the changes that you would want to make as you share data across different business contexts, across different application contexts. This allows you to essentially harmonize that data in a rule-based manner, if you will. And then a number of the features around comparison and rationalization, validation, and audit, these are foundational. And then last but not the least, we've delivered, in terms of making EDM better with Oracle, we've delivered package integrations for Oracle ERP Financials Cloud as well as EDM Cloud, so that you're able to get a set of prepackaged business rules, validations, attribution out of the box, depending upon the kind of application that you're using. So we have deep familiarity about those apps, and we can ask you questions on registration that allow you to configure EDM in a very fast and efficient manner, eliminating or reducing the consulting efforts that might be required in order to configure the solution and give you a faster time to value. And so a number of these things I touched on really represent differentiating capabilities, whether it's these application-specific views where you get what you see is what you get types of experiences, the collaboration capabilities, the governance workflows that are policy-driven, don't require any kind of modeling per se, subscriptions that automate synchronization, and the application adapters to support both Oracle and non-Oracle heterogeneous assets. A key point I wanted to leave you with around EDM is really the fact that we work across a spectrum of data sharing opportunities. So in the old world where we had EPM architect on premise for Hyperion EPM, and then we had DRM to do your mastering, we really created a continuum across those two design points that allow you to model applications and then traverse the journey towards mastering at your own pace. And so what that really means is that your journey with EDM begins with working in individual applications. I'd liken that to a wall before the wall analogy became unpopular. I promise we built this slide long before that. But the idea here is that, the wall represents a silo, and a silo isn't necessarily a bad thing. It represents your application and its dimensionality. Now, if you decide to create a sharing experience with your peers, you can give them read access. It's a lot like opening a window in that wall and letting someone peer inside, be able to maybe copy from it because you have a best version hierarchy for the product dimension, as an example. And then that allows that peer to then compare against your structure, referential structure, and be able to copy from it as needed in their application context. Now, if I want to do that on a regular basis repeatedly, I'd set up a subscription that allows me to say that every time I make a change, you can have a copy of my change and do with it as you please. That's really the concept of a subscription that we touched on earlier. And then as your solution matures, you can further scoot along that data sharing spectrum to add a door to that wall. And that really gives you the ability to create what we call a maintenance view that allows you to bring together the dimensionality, say, for the GL, for planning, for consolidation, for your data management mapping requirements, all into a single business perspective where a data steward who's responsible for maintaining your cost centers can go in and consistently apply those changes, across all those different business contexts. And this really is very compelling for customers in the cloud because it allows you to add additional source systems into the mix at your own pace and take an iterative evolutionary approach to change management. And of course, last but not the least, our goal is to deliver on a policy-driven mastering approach where you define a set of policies and then ultimately those policies harmonize the data without you having to get involved as such. And so how is EDM different from traditional MDM approaches? It's really that in the traditional world, we enforced an abstraction upon you as users. And with EDM, we really don't expect you to do that. It's a much more elastic approach, like I said, that's incremental, that's iterative, that's informal. So you can effectively crowdsource your changes across a set of authorized and permissioned users. It's contextual because we have the application context in front and center. And you can have multiple views to match your reality. You don't have to say that you've got this single version of the truth. You really have a shared understanding of the truth depending upon the business context that you're in. And so our approach with EDM is really differentiated in that it takes a bottoms-up approach to enterprise data management as opposed to traditional tools that took much more of a top-down approach, which, while it's very appealing in terms of securing sponsorship and blessings from senior management and sort of working our way down, it creates a situation where you aren't able to necessarily see the wins for a long period of time that can be very, very frustrating. The agile approach allows you to show quick wins today and build upon that and create a snowball effect across the organization. And so as you're thinking about EDM, keep in mind about the opportunities that relate to transformational events within your organization, whether they're digital, business model related, or financial redesign related. M&A, any kinds of environments where you've had challenges around reporting and misstatements, compliance failures, where it's really important for you to have sort of who's to know who's done what, where, when, and why. If you're also at a crossroads around whether to upgrade DRM to 11.2 or consider EDM, it's a really good time to evaluate EDM. And then, of course, if you have complex mapping requirements, we're doubling down in that area from an EDM standpoint and giving you essentially a single system and environment to master your dimensions, hierarchies, and your data maps. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to you, Stephanie, to walk us through your story at Noble, where you've had DRM and you invested in EDM, and would love to get a take about your journey and your experience.
Okay, thank you, Rahul, for giving me some of your time. Go share my screen. There we go. Okay, Rahul, can you see my share and hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Good deal. Okay. Again, thank you, Rahul, for giving up a little bit of your time this morning or afternoon. I'm happy to be sharing a EDM customer story with you today. My name is Stephanie Kohler, and I'm the team lead of the Enterprise Planning Group at Noble Energy. An acknowledgement up top, Chevron officially completed its acquisition of Noble on October 5th. So for the purposes of the following content, I'm just going to be referring to myself and Noble Energy as though we could rewind back to before the acquisition was announced. And I hope that won't be too confusing. I just want to be very clear that this is Noble pre-Chevron. I've got a couple of question marks by that Chevron logo there because Chevron has not officially extended a job offer to me, and it's a little bit crazy right now. And since there's question marks for that Chevron job, guess what? That QR code there, it's going to take you right to my LinkedIn page. So do with that what you will. I want to start off by acknowledging some of our team members in these projects. My team is made up of myself, Jody Marlowe, and Nutan Goganini. And between the three of us, we have about 50 years of combined EPM experience. And quite a lot of that is spent serving in the oil and gas industry. We also have our partners in corporate finance, and their sponsorships of these efforts, along with their support and cooperation, were essential to our success. Finally, our implementation partner, NRL, has been the magic ingredient to making these projects successful. I've known CISA and Tracy McMullen for a long time, just as members of the Hyperion and EPM community. But in this role, I've been lucky enough to get to work with them both and meet some other awesome NRL team members. Noble started using Essbase for planning about 18 years ago, and in 2008 supplemented that environment with Hyperion planning, which together supported best practices planning and budgeting. Also on-premise, DRM is used to manage large and complex hierarchies for both planning and for Oracle EBS. After years of growth and change, this environment had become incredibly slow. Teams spent a lot of time waiting for aggregations to finish, and a lot of late nights were spent on reconciliations and slide preparation. This is where we've been, where we are, and where we thought we wanted to go. To help frame the discussion for today, I'm going to be starting with the role DRM has played in our environment and how we used EDM to help us design and build our corporate planning and budgeting application in the cloud, and what that maintenance and maturity of that environment looks like now. We're just going to blow past number 6. On this chart, as aforementioned, Chevron is in the driver's seat on what systems and people they want to retain and integrate. So I'll take us from DRM at 1 over to 4, implementation of corporate planning cloud, and the parallel implementation of EDM. Here is a bit of an overview of the EPM footprint at Noble. DRM is the only EPM application that is a production application that we still have on-prem. So we are almost all the way to the cloud. And this didn't happen all at once. 2 of those EPBCS instances were used in an effort where we spun up a planning and budgeting pilot / proof of concept that is now the production planning environment for Noble Midstream Partners. In that same year, another project was going on. The accounting team partnered with their IT support teams and implemented account reconciliations. Then we started scoping PBCS for corporate finance and secured those additional instances. And if memory serves, the EDM instances were acquired along with the Oracle Financials Cloud purchases. Both planning and budgeting cloud production environments are fed actuals from the Financial Accounting Hub, and both of our user populations use SmartView primarily for reporting. We would not see that full transition to the cloud without decommissioning DRM, which still has an important role to play. And there's a little bit more to come on that. Mainly, I want to drive home that you don't necessarily have to have everything figured out from the get-go. It takes time to prove out your design and data flows and get your team acclimated to cloud ERP. And I think it's a good point to make here that your tried and true Hyperion crew, your DRM folks, your planning and S-base gurus, they can handle these changes really well. The skill set is the same, just some new interfaces and a couple of new tricks to learn. And I certainly think that my team is proof of that can be done. In our corporate cloud implementation project, we had to decide what role DRM would play in data governance. We were deploying most of our dimensions to on-premise planning with DRM and EPMA and pushing out our large entity dimension, or RC, to EBS and to the Financial Accounting Hub. You can see the flow of RC doesn't originate in DRM, it actually originates in P2. We derived a unique benefit from DRM when it was implemented. We took the recursive hierarchies that existed in P2 and created a tree-based hierarchy in DRM. And this was done by creating derived parent entities. This created tremendous value in the support of reporting out of EBS. And we just weren't able to achieve the same result with EDM alone at the time of implementation. We integrated most of our dimensions from EBS to EDM, but we still run RC through DRM, and ideally in the future, this would all be in EDM. But at the time of implementation, again, the functionality wasn't quite there. We do our planning not unlike most organizations at a higher level of detail than we receive actuals for account and entity. One of the benefits we get from EDM is that it manages the mappings from that low level of detail to that higher planning level almost seamlessly. So for example, if I'm planning a forecast at a field level and I might have 200 wells that roll up to that single field, EDM keeps track of that relationship by inheritance down the hierarchy, and then we can just pull that into data management. OneCloud takes care of the formatting requirements needed to make those updates, those dynamic mappings in data management. And it also handles scheduling of events, so those updates can occur automatically. Since we already had a mature and stable DRM environment, implementing EDM was not something we technically needed to do in parallel with the implementation of corporate planning and budgeting cloud. In fact, it was not part of the original project. Originally, we were just going to add additional properties into DRM and do our dimension management the same way we'd always done it. As we progressed with our build, however, we started to see that there would be some big advantages that EDM could bring to the project. Put a pin in that, and I'm going to come back to that. One of the other factors that helped us make the decision to move to EDM was our enterprise applications roadmap beyond planning and budgeting. At that time, Oracle Financials Cloud project was due to be starting soon. And we thought, we're already paying subscription fees for EDM in anticipation for that project. We kind of thought, let's be proactive, learn the tools really well, and when the Oracle Financials project spins up, we'll be experts and everybody will win. And for future benefit, we'd be just that much closer to offboarding our on-prem applications. So for the first phase of EDM was primarily to provide dimension support for RC, account, cost center, company, sub-account to planning. The other proactive approach we took was to include in the initial implementation of EDM another dimension called wedge. During our scoping exercise, we saw that having this dimension was a need for the business, but it was not scoped in as a phase 1 item. Rather than casting the concept aside, it was very easy to go ahead and build it into EDM for future development with zero impact to the project. We learned really quickly how different EDM is from DRM. And it's kind of hard to wrap your head around just how different it is until you start using it. In EDM, there is this concept of a master application. And master is your everything bucket. It has your primary and your alternative hierarchies. All node properties you have for all applications go here, including all of your S-basy stuff like time balance and consolidation operators. It all goes in master. We created a subscription for master for planning and budgeting environment and called it Noble Plan. If there's a node we want in Noble Plan, we give it membership to Noble Plan in master. That essentially builds your hierarchy with the level of detail you want and leaves out detail that you don't want. All the while, still maintaining that relationship between those mastered nodes in master to its subscriptions. For us, we wanted to be selective on how we chose accounts and RC to plan to. One of the challenges that came up in the Oracle Financials Cloud ERP project I mentioned earlier was its inability to handle that 600,000 node RC dimension. So we mocked up a solution earlier this year and we're really close to proving out our thinking. But like many other projects, it was set aside with COVID-19 and came to kind of a more official halt with the Chevron acquisition announcement. What that would have looked like though, we would have created a new subscription just for Oracle Financials. And we give membership only to report center nodes to be included in that application. We would endeavor to do that by using either a new or an existing property flag in DRM that then we'd push on to master. So back to the turning point in bringing EDM into the project, that kind of big advantage I mentioned a few slides ago. Our source for loading in actuals to planning and budgeting is the Financials Accounting Hub, which is cloud and also Essbase under the covers. So we optimized our load process using cloud-to-cloud integrations. We use data management to tell that data where to go for account and RC. So there are properties assigned in EDM that designate mappings from level 0 to the designated planning level. And with inheritance, again, these properties can be propagated down the hierarchy very easily. We also manage planning application level mappings in EDM. So for one of our cubes, as an example, our users required more detail for G&A. So with this design, we're able to pull two different levels of detail for G&A into Noble Plan, one with a higher level of detail and one with a more granular detail. All of these mapping designations are made with node properties, and we dynamically push them regularly to data management using OneCloud. Lessons learned. It's a good one, good juicy one. So Noble Energy was an early adopter of EDM, and I'm sure you know from hearing about the benefits of cloud, if something doesn't work or doesn't work well, Oracle does fix it eventually through their monthly patching schedule. So basically, we've been there so you don't have to. The Oracle EDM patch release from last year in October, it looked like someone had pulled our Oracle service requests from just the past few months and said, here you go, here's your monthly enhancement. And it was fantastic. Cloud Customer Connect should be bookmarked in your browser. You can post an idea or a problem, and I promise you that someone else is struggling with the same thing. Folks in the community regularly visit here to share ideas and upvote ideas that they like. And Oracle does read your comments and ideas, and they do make big changes, as you're hearing from Rahul today. And in the past year, with even more patches and enhancements, almost all of the functionality that we had ever asked for has been delivered. Where there were gaps in functionality during development and implementation, OneCloud was like a Swiss Army knife toolkit, and we were never able to get out of a jam that we couldn't keep progressing through. We didn't start our project with EDM officially on board as a player, and on reflection, it would have made the decision a little bit sooner. We could have saved some time that we ended up in development, brainstorming, troubleshooting. And finally, it's hard to comment on the future, but I will say our priorities would have been to configure EDM to feed the RC dimension to Oracle Cloud Financials, and we certainly would be looking for ways to decommission the DRM on-premise environment. And that's all the content I have. So I'm going to pitch this back over to Rahul. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Stephanie. So I know it looks like we're pretty much at the conclusion of our session in terms of the formal period that we were allocated. So Vanessa, should we switch to any final questions, or do we have time for me to cover our most recent release, if that would be of interest to folks?
Yeah, so I mean, if we just want to I mean, we can probably go for about 10 more minutes total. So yeah, we'd love to have you cover that for sure.
Okay, we'll quickly jump into that then. So thank you, Stephanie, for that wonderful presentation. I did want to comment that, to your point, it's really critical that folks understand that we are actively monitoring Oracle Customer Connect, and on a daily basis, I'm personally, reviewing the forum where you're able to discuss your questions around existing functionality, and then the Idea Lab, where you're able to propose ideas and engage with us directly on, when something is coming, and whether the idea, we can vet the idea together. So it's a really great interaction and engagement platform that I encourage each and every one of you to leverage. That said, we take a very sort of sense and respond approach to our product roadmap, and so we don't, publish a whole lot in advance, because we take a very agile approach to development, and we definitely do prioritize those organizations' requests that are actively implementing, because that's sort of the nature of projects in the cloud. And so, with that said, based on feedback from our customers, we delivered in our most recent release a whole bunch of innovation. We typically do, at least 4 new feature releases a year. In years past, we've done anywhere between 7 and 10 new feature releases. So we're sort of stabilizing at roughly, 1 new feature release a quarter. But that said, we have the opportunity to introduce new functionality on a monthly basis as part of our monthly release cycle. And so in terms of EDM, in the most recent release, we already had approval policies. We introduced conditional approval capabilities that allow you to specify a node condition, and based on that, really route a approval to one user or group over another, as the case may be. We also introduced a new policy type called notification policies that allow you to define policies for your community based on a RACI compliant model. So for those of you who aren't familiar, typically from a workflow standpoint, you might want to organize who's responsible, who's accountable, who's contributing, and who simply needs to stay informed. The notification policies give you the ability to now essentially have folks who simply want to become aware of changes but not participate in the change workflow to receive notifications of changes that have been committed. We've also introduced a lot more reporting capabilities to give administrators the ability to look at assignments they've made to our permission-based sharing model, the policies that they have essentially, deployed in production that might speak to sort of who are the users and groups that are authorized to approve or to receive notification. Subscriptions, remember, this is the automation capability that allows us to synchronize changes across applications. You might make an assignment to subscribers and want to have an understanding of, who have we given authorization to subscribe or be an assignee to a subscription in which business context. We've also introduced a new capability around visualizing locations, and these are really shared locations for a given member within a particular hierarchy, so that you can look at all the different locations in which that particular member might be in other alternate hierarchies, so that you can quickly step through those and also look at the attribution across them. So you can actually understand, what's the data storage value associated with the shared location versus the one that I'm currently on, so you can hop to the primary as the case may be. We've also enabled, things like derived defaults for that data storage property, so that once you set the primary, the others are automatically calculated for you. In EDM Cloud, we introduced, hybrid cube support, and that's something that we wanted to do within EDM as well. So that became available in 2008, so that you can configure that as part of your registration of individual modules within EDM Cloud. You also can, move and add children for predefined members. as well as suppress the export of those implicitly shared descendant members for shared members within EPM Cloud dimensions. We had improved the ability to handle nulls and empty values in imports and exports. Another feature that a lot of DRM customers really liked was the ability to validate a dimension on export. We obviously had the ability to do both independently, and now you can do that as part of a single process. For the packaged application types, such as planning and budgeting, consolidation and close, there were customers who wanted to, for example, leverage the planning application adapter to manage Essbase applications that may exist on-premise, but they wanted to turn off some of the validations that we typically apply in the context of a planning application. So now you can do that to configure, for example, an Essbase application in EDM and help use, leverage all of the packaged metadata that we offer to accelerate your time to value. We also we've always had the ability to sort of derive attribution based on an expression. Now with this release, you're able to essentially calculate what we call nested derived property expressions, which means you can use a derived property as a source to calculate another derived property, as long as there's no exceptions resulting from a circularity within your logic. And then, as we do in every release, we've enriched our expressions builder to support the ability to manage these or leverage your location information within the context of a particular calculation. For example, to build a validation to ensure that you only have a single instance across two alternate branches of a particular dimension, and so on and so forth. So that's a quick summary for you of the new functionality that we've introduced within EDM this release. At this point, I'd be more than happy to open it up to questions to either Stephanie or me as time permits. Thank you.
Yeah, everybody, we have probably about maybe, 3 minutes. We can definitely take some of the questions in if you want to send them through that Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar that'll pull up. Just let us know. And thank you guys for a great session. That was very informative for sure. And I'm glad we got to cover that update at the end. That was awesome.
Great. Thank you very much.
I answered one in the Q&A chat, but I'm not seeing, there's open. What was one cloud purpose? So I guess I'll answer this live because it's too much to type out. OneCloud does a really good job of file manipulations and automation, and it's really an incredibly flexible tool, and it's a very visual tool. So we were able to string together multiple, excruciating file manipulations to move data from EDM to data management. And, once you make those painful, identify those requirements of shoring that file up to something that will load, it kind of just works. But yeah, we're using right now, OneCloud is, we've got many automated jobs. We're pushing company, cost center, daily, and we're pushing mappings for account and RC kind of during close. But yeah, the more we got into it, the more, OneCloud just kind of was filling in some of the gaps that, we weren't seeing in the delivered Oracle school tool set.
So there's, I believe there's one more question from John, and I think it has to do with the batch abilities within EDM. I think it's just to be brief, because we're out of time. I just want to say that we have a full featured REST API available for EDM to integrate into any of your broader orchestration, batch orchestration processes. One way we expose that is within EPM Automate, but you're welcome to incorporate our REST API into any broader integration process using tooling such as an integration platform or an ETL capability or what have you.
Fantastic. So we'll give it maybe just another 30 seconds or so. We'll see if anything comes in, and then I guess we will call it a wrap. All right.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Really appreciate
Thank you, Rahul.
Presenting.
Same. Very honored to be side by side with you today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.